I am David Selinger. I am the CEO and founder at Deep Sentinel. I also co-founded Redfin about 15 years ago. Catch me on the Jesse T Show.
The mighty, the powerful Dave Selinger. What's going on, brother?
Hey man, glad to be here. I'm already jazzed and excited for the conversation.
Yeah, we had a nice little warm up talking about different biohacking measures and what to look for specifically in your poop, and I think it was a really great way to break the ice and get into conversation. So we'll see if we dive back into that in any capacity. But
Anytime you can start your day out talking and thinking about poop, that's a good day,
it's a
right?
great day. We've already started off hitting the ground running, and hopefully nothing else is running behind us as we run. But, but brother, it's been a pleasure. You and I have been in contact a little bit here and there over the last, few weeks. And maybe a little bit longer now. Time's been flying by, maybe in a couple months. And just through your stuff, my stuff, we finally able to connect and have this conversation, which I'm excited to A, have, B, witness, and then C, get out to the world. And so if you could, just a little color and context as to who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Dave Selinger. I am a 44-year-old, married, half Asian, half Jewish male. I grew up in a little town in Southern Oregon called Merlin, which is currently fighting back a forest fire. And it's a town of a couple hundred people. It's a suburb of a town called Grants Pass. I then went on to go to school at Stanford, went to Amazon, ran one of the first AI teams at Amazon. I started a company called Redfin, which is a wonderful and amazing real estate company. It's a publicly traded one now. And then started a number of different startups. And currently I'm running a really unique security company called Deep Sentinel. And just to kind of give you the 30 seconds on what I'm doing right now, this is a mission driven organization with the goal of making everyone safer. And we're looking at what were the technologies that were possible to really change the trajectory of people's lives. And safety is obviously, it's at the core of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's literally the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we wanted to use technology to change that and affect that. And Deep Sentinel is a crime stopping tool. It uses cameras and AI, and we're really the only company in the world that does that. So
Wow.
happy to kind of go into that. Happy to go into the background. I think there's all kinds of different directions we could take
Yeah,
this.
man, you're a wealth, treasure trove of experience and great conversation as I've learned over the last couple months. But the first thing I have a question for is the most probably important. Star Wars fan?
Yeah, yeah. I am a Star Wars fan. I'm an awkward Star Wars fan. In fact, so if you're watching the Zoom side of this or seeing some of the pictures, you're just gonna see a ton of Star Wars stuff behind me. What you're not gonna see is a ton of Star Wars stuff. It's in front of me as well. I've got little zoomies. I've got my little weird Darth Vader pen right here.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Star Wars. I think it's just a neat story. It has great characters. I think it tells a little bit about innovation. Some of the way that George Lucas made the original films, I think, is one of the most inspiring stories about filmmaking. Just how do we push the limits here? How do we do this? I mean, even my favorite kind of how-to shot here is George Lucas when they shot the speeders flying over the ice planet of Hoth at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. At this time, they had not figured out how do you do a weird green screen where you have the inside of a vehicle and then you create an artificial scene on the outside of it. So you have two scenes. And in order to do that, they had to do this really unique method. Again, no digital modification, all using traditional green screen. And so they filmed the inside of the speeders, and they had to make that semi-transparent in order to show the ice planet on the outside. And so actually, if you watch the original filming of Empire Strikes Back, you can actually see the planet through the inside of the
Wow.
speeder because they had to, use these kind of 1970s technologies to try to accomplish, what we can get in a video game in 10 seconds now. But I love that part about the technical creation of this is so real. There's literally no CGI. It's all mechanical stunts and mechanical actors and mechanical filming. So everything about Star Wars to me is a little bit of inspiration.
Absolutely. And it obviously stands the test of time. And it's such a beautiful story. And the force, light versus dark. I mean, exactly what we're facing in the world pretty much our whole time as human beings, but really
Yep.
paramount these days. and the force is within all of us, and the strength to achieve and to grow. And it was just a beautiful journey, beautiful visual cinematography. But the reason why I asked was very pointed. It wasn't just to chew the fat. It was basically because I feel like, from what I know about you, and we can speak to this a little bit deeper, the idea of being a dreamer, the idea of being a rebel, the idea of innovation, of pushing the envelope, the idea of technology. Because back when these movies came out, there was some really cool things about them. And thinking about like R2D2 and like cyborgs and like all these cool things,
Yep.
it's like there was all these things tech wise. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, is there are some of these ideas and almost values of the inside the movie kind of what spawned you and spurred you into the world that you're in, to break open computers, to learn about them? I mean, was it kind of part and parcel coming together and saying, you know what, I kind of want to like see if I can live in this Star Wars kind of world where it's technology and it's innovation, it's being a rebel, it's growth, it's innovation? Did that have a play into your career?
Yeah, I mean, it does, and it did. Um, I guess I'll start with like when I was 6 years old, I went to a book fair at my elementary school, and at the book fair, there was a book that had a story about the droids R2D2 and C3PO, and it was again, this is a weird memory from being 6 years old, but it spoke to us from their perspective about how they would interact with the world. And obviously, we know now, and I didn't quite understand as a kid at the time, they weren't really droids, they were people standing in a costume, but they still fulfilled the character, and they were in character in this book, talking to us about what the possibilities are of robots. They showed, I think it was a Ford manufacturing plant, how robots manufacture the car, and they lift up the large plates of steel and things like that, and how robots are integrated into our life.
Yep.
And that, in a very material way, as you point out, is the way that I view the world around us, and that future ahead of us, and that I've committed my career to, as much as possible, steering that both forward and into a positive direction.
Yep.
And it's the combination of those two things that I think is been the centerpiece of my career. I'll also comment that my next door neighbor is kind of a hippie. His name's Felix. If he's listening, hey Felix.
What's up,
He's one of
Felix?
my best friends. We hang out all the time, have a beer at night, and he's a little bit more of a hippie. He just got back from Burning Man. If you don't know what Burning Man is, take some psychedelics and do a Google search and watch all the YouTube videos, and then go next year. I have never been to Burning Man.
I
I'm
can't wait.
probably not a good Burning Man candidate because of my asthma and blah 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 blah. But I love it. And so anyway, he and I talk about Star Wars all the time. He's a true believer. He is there, and he, when we talk about Star Wars, he talks about the Force in the way that some people talk about, Christianity and religion. And
Mhm.
it's very much front and center for his belief structure around the world. And so we talk about that all the time, usually over a beer or something. But yeah, he's great. So it's a weird thing to kind of choose, but it's definitely part of my life in all kinds of ways.
I love it, and it's such a great story, and it's a part of your story, part of how you're leaving this world, not leaving it yet, but like you're
Thank you.
affecting the world. Yeah, you're affecting the world uh, through what you do, and then being inspired by something like this, and it's beautiful. And to touch on Burning Man, I cannot wait. It's on my bucket list, and we talked about my journey and using psychedelics for spiritual growth and for healing and for enjoying the ride here on earth. But I will say, since you are into Star Wars as much as you are, I would potentially down the road, if you were to do psychedelics, just know that on one of my journeys, actually two of them, I've traveled the cosmos before. Literally
Wow.
in my own my body was here, but I was in a different realm, and I've seen my soul traveling through the cosmos before. It is absolutely wild. I've seen a shaman sitting in front of me that his entire silhouette in the middle of the night as we were doing ayahuasca, I've seen the cosmos inside of his shape. And all he did was look at me and say, "Now you understand, brother." We had zero contact of word before that. And I said, "I absolutely understand now."
Good.
And it was this beautiful, like unspoken knowing, like the world is fine, the world will go on, and it's just a beautiful place to be. But going back to your journey, I think it's important talking about AI, right? Because we live in an age right now where there's a lot of innovation.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of misconception. People think that we're going to see Terminator one day, and it's going to be Skynet versus us, and it's going to be, fatalists like Elon Musk, who I actually really like, but he's kind of a fatalist, and he talks about how it's gone too far, and eventually and he's trying to get a hold of it through what is it? Oh, I forget the name of it. It's the AI interface for the cochlear implants. His company that's trying to basically get it. Oh, why can't I think of the name of it? Do you know what?
It's the one where he just had a baby with the COO of that company.
Oh yeah, he's trying to impregnate everyone, by the way, from what I hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what is the company? What is that one? I want to say like Mind Neuralink.
Neuralink, that's what it was. I knew the idea, but I forgot the name. But basically, he's trying to at least stave off the inevitable. He's doing a lot of weird stuff anyway. But I love
Oh,
the idea that we have a guy like that on Earth. Um, the idea of this AI and where it started to where it is now, and then you get guys that we've talked about before, like Lex Friedman and his play and all of this. Where did you get into AI, and how did you see it playing into the fabric of society, and kind of what have you seen from A to where it is today?
sure. So before I answer that question, just because you brought up one of my most favorite subjects, is you said Elon Musk on this planet was. If you don't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, Elon Musk shot his car out into space towards
Yes.
Mars.
Yeah.
And that moment was, I think, just this shared moment for humanity that was like really amazing. And then we all kind of forgot about it. And by the way, his car already went past Mars, right? Like it, and I for such an incredible freaking accomplishment for us to have forgotten about it in the ensuing 4 or 5 years just seems to me like the most amazing. Like, are we so advanced that some individual dude could shoot his car to Mars, and then when it gets there, we just forget about it because we got so much other shit going on?
Wild.
I thought that's pretty wild. In fact, it's gone past Mars and then looped all the way around the sun again, and then came. I think it's coming back closer to Earth in like another a year or so,
Wow.
and then it will shoot back out. But yeah, I mean, its core mission was already accomplished, and we just didn't even notice. But so I'll go back to your question about AI. So like, where did I get involved,
Yeah.
and what was the promise, and where is it gone? I mean, yes, right. Like Terminator 2 was absolutely kind of front of mind in terms of me as I think about what are the negative possibilities and the fatalistic version of the universe. Interestingly enough, Terminator 2 is probably one of the most famous movies from that time period, but it actually didn't gross that much revenue that
Isn't that
year,
amazing?
which is a terrible failure. So for those of you that haven't given enough money to Arnold Schwarzenegger, please do go buy that movie now and make up for all of his royalty shortcomings
Uh-huh.
because he's defined so much of our thinking. But yeah, I mean, I think in the 80s and 90s there was a fantastic view of what was possible. Right, there was a movie in the early 80s called War Games that talked about
Yes.
kind of
Great
computers
movie.
getting out of control and launching nuclear missiles because of simulating and humans suck and all these things that are maybe more true than we want or less true than we want. But I think more of what I would have seen there is that we were anthropomorphizing technology. What the way that we viewed AI was as a reflection of ourselves. They were a
Yeah.
reflection of our own fears. They were a reflection of our own aspirations. They weren't rooted in the possibilities of technology. They were rooted in ourselves. It
Almost
was
like
like
God
a
complex if you think about it, like made in the own image, right? It's the fear. The fear is,
in no unconditional sense. That's exactly what I'm saying.
yeah.
Is that and if you look at the way the United States viewed themselves, we had just ended the Cold War. It was
Yeah.
a period of progress. Cocaine was wild throughout America, right? Like,
Doctors and
it,
dentists were doing it regularly back then.
yeah, I mean, and not usually after your appointment, usually just before your appointment. And
Maybe
so,
with you during your appointment.
or during your appointment, yeah. And I mean, it was a wild time, but it really is a reflection that we in the Western world, as a society, viewed ourselves as having achieved the apex of human capability,
Yeah.
and that this next realm of technology was going to be a reflection thereof. And so you had these things, so the Turing test. Can technology be more empathetic than humans? Can it control
Hmm.
nuclear weapons? Can it do evil? And those were the types of questions that we were asking. And it's not to say that those questions aren't important, but they were rooted in the reflection of ourselves versus rooted in reality and then constrained by those worries about ourselves.
Yep.
What I would say about where we're at right now that I think is much more reasonable and useful is that in general, we're very focused on the core capabilities and then doing our best to constrain it. I think that the question of whether we can get a computer that pretends that it is sentient is not front of mind for most AI researchers now.
Okay.
In the research in AI for the last 7 or 8 years has been dedicated to a type of AI called deep learning.
Yep.
And that's been doing things, right? That's been doing things like, can we teach a robot to assemble a car just by showing it the car and having it do experimentation until it figures out that it put the car together right or wrong? Can we show a computer a bunch of people and then have it identify which ones are this person versus this person using facial recognition? Can we show a computer a bunch of videos and see which one has people committing crimes versus people that aren't committing crimes? Can we show a computer a game, an Atari game, a board game, a really, 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 really complex board game, and have it, solve this problem better
Yep.
than any computer's ever done? Can we show it the human genome and have it figure out how proteins fold,
Mm,
which is an unsolved computational problem for the last 50 years that was literally solved last year? And those are much more kind of capability driven. They start with a question, they start with the formulation, a very rigorously formulated problem, kind of much more like the scientific method, and then determine the methodologies by which we accomplish that. And so I would say that over the last 30 years in my involvement, that's the number one thing that's happened. And because of that, we've started doing those things, right? Like facial recognition, which was, the NSA really had the monopoly on facial
for
recognition 10
sure.
years ago. You can do that on your phone now, right? And you can crush what the NSA had 10 years ago. That's a pretty huge technical revolution. I do think that Elon Musk's push for let's now make sure we answer these questions, because now instead of having the technology of 30 years ago, we have the technology today. We can do these things that we couldn't do before.
Yes.
Now we should probably put some thought into how to put some boundaries around that so that we're safe and comfortable.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting, and it always comes down to, is it a tool or is it a weapon? And this could be a hammer.
Mm,
A hammer could be a
yeah.
tool or a weapon. You know, different. You know, there's different things out there, and it's all the user and the intention.
Yep.
And you do get down the rabbit hole a little bit, especially when you got a guy like Elon Musk, who's arguably one of the most successful, brightest minds in his own way. Like he's definitely an anomaly. There's not many
Yep.
people like him, and maybe you could even harken back to Da Vinci, or all these different people, Tesla, right? There's obviously, he named his car company after Nikola Tesla.
Yep.
But when you have someone like that who can, even move markets, right? How many times has he
Yep.
shifted markets and valuations on the stock price, right? Just by saying something or smoking weed on
He
Joe
didn't do
Rogan.
that. Just for the record, he never manipulated stock prices. I'm his attorney, and I'm 100% sure that he has never manipulated any stock.
Right, right.
Yeah, right. Like, let me just take a $44 billion company and create that out of a $30 billion company in
Which
about
is
25
wild,
seconds.
by the way. Everything, I mean, it's wild because and I admire him as a business person. I mean, I don't know much about him. I've heard things through the ether, but I don't know this person, personally. But to do some of the things and to get, I mean, he's been in debt with some of his companies, and he's had, some of these things kind of play themselves out. But just kind of the last piece there, and thinking about AI becoming sentient, or false sentient, not really quite sentient, maybe it thinks it is. In your mind, knowing that you kind of have a purview of Star Wars, and this dreamer kind of like looking at what's possible in the universe, knowing that anything's probably possible, right? What do you think about AI becoming sentient, becoming Skynet one day? Is it possible? Probable, for sure.
I think it's probable that we will be able to create a technology at some point, right? Not necessarily in the next 10 years or 20 years or even 100 years, that is able to contemplate actions in the context of its impact on itself.
Wow, that's. Do you remember when we were kids and like the technology we had access to? Like, we were probably still messing with bunny ears on the back of TVs, and we like, think about the technology advancements that you and I have
Yep.
lived through, and the warp speed, right, that it's going through. And it's beautiful, it's powerful, it saves lives, it creates opportunity, it does a lot of things, but it is the tool, and it's what do we do with that tool? So it's really interesting. Going back to your experience though, talking about some of these pivotal moments. We could talk about Redfin and how that was created and how you exited or stepped away, and some of these other big moments. Kind of how it got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So in terms of my own career, I'd say the probably the two guiding events of my life. First one would be my parents in middle school deciding that they did not have what I needed to grow, like in my direction. My parents are both physicians. They are uh, tech trolls. I mean, they really have no idea what's going on. For the old people that are listening to this, kind of think about Caveman Lawyer from Saturday Night Live in the '90s. I don't know where these voices come from in my cell phone as I'm driving my BMW down the freeway at 85 miles an hour, but I do know that this person should be found innocent. That's kind of my parents.
Great
Like they just
reference. Great reference.
literally do not understand technology at all. And so they decided in about 1986 that I was going to need other mentors to help me
Smart.
learn my stuff. And so they hired. I had a private chess tutor. In that time period, they hired a chess tutor to teach me chess. I beat my dad at chess for the first time when I was 9, and then he never won again
Yep.
since. And so
Locked it
it, for
down.
the yeah, for the first year, he was like, big middle finger for
Uh-huh.
his son. I'm not going to play with you anymore. This isn't fun anymore.
That's really funny. Good for
And then
you.
after that, he's like, okay, let's kind of swallow our ego and let's get a chess master. So I had a private chess tutor, and then I had a series of people that taught me how to program. And my parents sent me off to programs at Johns Hopkins University to learn how to program when I was really young, and that opened my eyes in so many ways. I mean, it was the type of thing that I'm replicating for my kids, sending them off to a camp where they find their own community, they can find a lot about their own identity, they
Beautiful.
can surround themselves with people that are more similar and people that can guide them, people that have been through that and have seen the pitfalls and can kind of help them understand, here are the dark things, here are the positive things, and here's how
Yes.
to guide yourself this way. And so I love that. I benefited from it so much, and I love that my parents recognized that they couldn't do it. So my older daughter, last summer, we committed ourselves as a family to start sending her. She's a thespian, like a all about acting, and so we started sending her off to an acting camp as much as we could over the last couple of years. And it's interesting because she goes to school whatever 35 weeks out of the year, 32 weeks out of the year. She does other stuff. The 3 weeks out of the year that matter to her, out of the whole year, are the 3 weeks that she's at
Now,
camp.
you said something very similar about your own experience, correct? Like you said that like you had looked forward to the camp that you were in, like the 1 or 2
Yeah.
weeks out of the year. That was so you're drawing on your experience and passing on legacy in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, right? And it's not legacy in the sense of like, hey, I'm going to teach her how to program computers. I would love that. That'd be neat. But it's legacy in that it's okay to stretch beyond it, and that finding that identity, even if it doesn't fit in your community around you,
Yep.
it is your identity, to find ways to feed that, to discover it and shape it, and find others who may not live near us, to help grow that. And again, that's exactly my experience when I went to Johns Hopkins University program. It's called CTY, and I would go every summer for 1 or 2 weeks, and it fundamentally defined who I thought of myself as from that point forward. And
Mm.
that, had my parents not done that, I'm sure, I would have figured something out. But it became that anchor for me, that foundation for me in my self understanding, and that I didn't feel weird anymore. There were hundreds of other kids that went to this camp that were more like me than any of these other kids that I went to school with. And that made me feel both that I could fit in somewhere, just maybe it's not here, and that I had a direction. Like that, there were other people that were on this path, and when we eventually converge our lives at some point in the future, that we're gonna find that we have a lot of things in common, and that we're gonna continue accelerating our path in that direction.
Yep.
And when to kind of take this another step in a different direction, I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of high schools and middle schools. I find that really an important part of giving back to society and paying forward. So I work with our local high school here, and the kids that are about to apply for college, I help them reflect on what are the things that matter for them and which colleges might they want to apply to. And it's interesting how much those people are framing their college decision based on what their parents told them they need to be when they grow up
Yeah.
versus listening to who they are. And so I find that most parents appreciate that I'm having that conversation with their kids and like exploring that. I usually don't say things like, you should drop out, never go to college, and then probably live on the street.
Uh,
But I do kind of help them have some of these questions, these conversations and questions with their parents, like, hey, maybe college isn't right for you the first year. Maybe you take a gap year
Such great advice.
and
Yep.
and take some time off because of these 5 reasons. Not just generally, not but because for you, I heard you say this, I heard your parents say this, and I heard you say this. And when I put those things together, that sounds like there's an unresolved conflict that really at the core, what you need to figure out is who you want to be and what this means for you. And that there's a set of experiences you don't have that you need to answer that. For other kids, they say, these are my gaps. And they're going to go to a state school that has a lot of breadth and they can learn that at school, and I think that's great. And so again, as I look at my own child doing this other thing that's entirely foreign to me and weird, I think that being open to that and really embracing whoever that is at the core. And again, as a dad, we can be proud of all kinds of things for our kids.
Oh, for
I'd
sure.
say that that's the number one thing that I'm proud of with that daughter is that we've helped her develop that sense of identity, and that she actually got an award at the end of the year last year because she then reached out to other kids at her school that she saw foundering and helped them find their own voice. She got this award because her acting teacher, there were a bunch of kids in the acting classes that wanted to learn drama, wanted to learn how to speak, but they were so shy, they were scared. And she picked out three of them in the class and
Wow.
mentored them over the course of the whole year. And at the end of the year, they gave a huge speech in front of the entire class, which the teacher was like, I've been doing this for years and I've never seen a kid start here and end up there. And that's entirely because of what Abigail did.
That's beautiful. Look at the teaching, the principles in motion, and how they're taking on a life of her own through her, and how she's operating and leaving the world a better place, so to speak, like leaving it every interaction that she has a little bit better where she can. And I think a big narrative there is self-awareness, and for her, instilling self-awareness in her through this process, through your own prior experience and through your own knowledge. And again, my friends and I, we'll talk about, a lot of different things. And one of the things we talk about is, leaving a legacy. And leaving a legacy doesn't have to just be financial. It doesn't have to just, it could be knowledge. It could be obviously values and beliefs, and giving people opportunity, right? Because, for me, I wasn't the person that needed to go to college right away after high school. I had to go learn the world a little bit. I had some growing up to do.
Yep.
I had some things I needed to experience because I was immature. I grew up kind of in a bubble, and to a degree, in terms of like the set and setting that I grew up in. And once I had these more worldly experiences and more connections, more relationships, see how life actually works, it really set the trajectory of my life's path. And just you having, going back to the self-awareness analogy, for you having the self-awareness to be able to even think like that as a dad, and going back to your parents, to, you talk about maybe at one point being egoic around playing chess, your dad, right? But like they had self-awareness and they had humility to say, you know what, we're not the best uh leaders in this avenue to get him where he needs to be. Yes, we're doing great in here and here and here, but when it comes to him being your zone of genius, we don't operate there.
Yep.
So it even started with them, and I'm sure it probably trickled down from them before in their parents and ancestors and things like this. So I think that the legacy lives on, which is beautiful. And so, in thinking about kind of your career path, and just kind of being mindful of your time here. You got a few more minutes with you. We could talk about Deep Sentinel. We could talk about Redfin. We could talk about both. Where do you want to jump in?
Sure. I mean, I'd love to kind of transition that into how that plays in at Deep Sentinel. So
Let's do it.
we're kind of talking about the integration of meaning and principle into business. I've struggled with that over the last 25 years of my career. I've been a part of probably 15, 20, maybe 25 nonprofits over the course of my career. And the origin of that is trying to figure out how do I do this thing that's technology that while maybe some of us entrepreneurs say we're making the world a better place, let's just be really, really freaking awesome. Like getting people to buy, honest, pardon me, getting people to buy more books and getting people to buy more stuff from Amazon isn't making the world a better place. Getting people to buy real estate more intelligently, maybe making the world a little bit better place. Really cool business. Love Redfin. We'll do, I talk about that forever. But again, not really making the world a better place.
Ooh,
And so I spent a lot of time on the board of directors as a donor, as an active participant, as a volunteer in nonprofits. And I will summarize my 15 or 20 years of learning into my own conclusions. And these are my conclusions. I'm going to take ownership for them. I'm caveating them because I don't want to stop anyone else from doing their own journey and exploration here. But my conclusion is that nonprofits suffer from an almost incurable disease, which is that the ends justify the means.
mm,
And the ends justify the meansianness or itis, and ends justifying the means itis is so dangerous and so prevalent and so poisonous that in general I don't work with many nonprofits. And this isn't to say nonprofits are bad. It's not to say that people that are involved in them are bad. I want to be really, really careful with that. But
yes.
that as a structure for the way that I want to spend my time, it doesn't provide the return that I'm looking for. The second thing I found was that the things that I did find that really worked, we built as a family, we built a couple of orphanages and schools
Beautiful.
in developing countries. One that I went to visit that's my favorite is I went to go visit an orphanage in Ghana that is just amazing. And these are run by a person locally. The person locally is the entrepreneur, they're the CEO, they're the person that takes responsibility and accountability. And even in that context where we have a great leader, the act of giving is not just a transfer of assets, it's a transfer of credit
Yep.
and it's a transfer of accountability. And when you transfer credit and you transfer accountability, you create codependency.
Yeah.
That may be small, it may be large, it may be all, but it's almost never zero. I've never seen a gift given to someone in need that does not have secondary effects. And again, this isn't to say that children should ever starve. I don't believe that, and I
Right.
fundamentally would do everything I could to prevent that from happening. It's not to say that there are not innocent people in the world that are suffering. It's just to say that those codependencies I've seen again over time become the dominant power structure, where you have entire countries where their economy is dependent on donations, and that creates a psychology of the citizens and a structure that is um, difficult and momentum in the administrations and the institutions that are very, very difficult to modify. And so that's again, that was maybe longer than I intended on spending, but my learning was that those were not channels where I have the ability politically or financially to really change
Yep.
those things because they're so well set in stone. I mean, even I think Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos would look at a lot of those things and say, even as some of the most wealthy people in the world, also cannot change those things.
Right.
And so my next phase of my career, which really started in about 2015, was asking the question, okay, if I can't do that via directly charitable means, how do I take this desire, this mission, these principles that I have in my body and in my soul and in my being, and things that I want to hand down as my legacy to my kids? How do I meet those needs in the context of a for-profit business? And I want to make sure that whatever I do next meets the needs of both creating financial wealth and a financial profit machine, a for-profit vehicle, but also delivers the value back to society in a way that's meaningful.
Yep.
And Deep Sentinel does that. It also, for me, in a very selfish way, I'm an AI geek, and I wanted it to have to do with AI, and that was one of my other filters. I was like, I just needed to do that. And what I realized, I mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As I became a parent, I started looking at the impact of safety on children.
Yep. Yep. It's
I looked
huge.
at it in the context of my kids. I looked at it in the context of some of their peers. My daughter and I have two foster children that we've helped raise over the last 20 some years,
Beautiful.
and how safety has impacted their life in a very negative way,
Mm,
unfortunately. And that when you have a strong and an irreversible relationship with safety in your life, it is almost impossible to overcome that. It becomes kind of a traumatic event that has a lifelong period of overcoming that. You know, you look at I took those specific experiences I had, and I looked at societally who are the kids that do well when they that have a high probability of graduating, have high grades, have things like that, and they're people that come from a sense of home safety,
yeah.
love safety, food safety, and that safety was the word. And so safety became the mission and the mantra for our family and for Deep Sentinel, that our mission is to make people safer and make sure they feel safer. And what Deep Sentinel does, just in a really quick blurb here, that's different than any other type of security, is we use cameras and AI, and we combine those with live active guards to proactively prevent crime. So if you come on my property right now, the second you enter the property, the cameras are watching you. Lots of people have cameras like that, but that's where the similarities stop. My cameras are automatically tied to an AI that's evaluating 24 frames a second, every single act that you do, to say, is this suspicious? And if it's suspicious, it sends that video to a trained guard. And that
Wow.
guard's job is to stop you from committing a crime immediately. So if you walk up to my front door with a crowbar and you start banging on the front door, within about 5 seconds, you're going to hear over the two-way audio of these cameras, either a siren's going to go off or you're going to hear a person say, hey, sir, I need you to stop what you're doing. Mr. Jesse T, I need you to stop what you're doing. Put the crowbar down. The police are on their way.
Nice.
And that just stops most criminals. And what's different about that is that what I realize is that all other security systems are much more passive. They're recordings. You know, we all have recordings of people stealing stuff off our porch,
Yep.
or and you've seen these on the web. Like, I caught this guy stealing this. You didn't catch crap, buddy. I mean,
You
all you caught
witnessed
was the
after the
empty.
fact.
Yeah, that's right. You caught the empty missing space where
Yeah.
your package used to be. You got the empty missing space where your car used to be. Congratulations, right? What we do is we stop that from happening. And that's, again, if you think about the trend of crime in society, even a package theft leaves people feeling like their safety's been violated, their privacy's been
No
violated.
question.
And that changes our behavior, changes the way we interact with other people, whether we just honk at someone on the freeway later that day, and then that person gets mad and then has road rage and has a longer term impact, right? Like, these things affect the way we live as society. And again, safety, if we can just move the needle on that, I fundamentally believe we can create a better society.
It's extremely powerful. And, for someone who actually grew up for the first half of my life, first 20 years, maybe a little bit more before I joined the military, I had a lot of unsafety in my life. Food safety, physical safety, emotional safety, love, all these things. And it is so powerful once you can start to instill that. And
Dude,
once you
Jesse, the thing that stuck out to me. So I became a dad in 2008, and in 2013, my wife and I went to a parenting class, and I became so inspired listening to this parenting teacher. It's a parenting class called the Parent Project. It is not the one that probably any of your listeners are aware of. It is an intervention based program for kids who are having contact with law enforcement.
wow. Wow.
Meaning 8-year-olds that are getting arrested for selling drugs.
Yeah.
And we didn't choose it because of that. That's not, just to be clear, that wasn't our problem. But we wanted to go to a parenting class that was really different than like the fuzzy wuzzy, let's give each other hugs and stuff.
Yeah.
It
Let's
was
get
an
real.
intervention.
Yeah.
How do we really deal with the problems? Because, by the way, those fuzzy wuzzy things aren't working, right? Like ADHD is on the rise, child mental health issues are on the rise. We need to address this as an event that requires intervention. And so that's why
Yes.
we chose that. The number one thing that stuck out to me, and I want to reach out to all your listeners and have them hear this. The number one lesson that they started with was to say, here's how important safety is in the context of your child. One of the things that we hear about children that are having contact with law enforcement is that they don't hear I love you every day. And the number one thing you can change today, that costs nothing, takes no time, and has a massively statistical significant impact on the outcome of your child, is you say I love you to them every single day.
No question. No
Every single
question.
day, say I love you to your kids, and it will statistically move the outcome of your child. Those simple 3 words. Can't say them. Lots of parents can't. Their parents never said it to them. I get it. Write it on a napkin, stick it in their lunch every day. Do it. Do
It
it
is the three
starting
most
today.
powerful words in the human language. And there's a book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, and it comes from another CEO from Silicon Valley that failed and came back. And basically, we were never taught, most, when I say we as a collective, I know I wasn't, to say I love myself, to look in the mirror every day and say I love you, and to start from there, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give love if you don't have love. Can't give what you don't have. But we're also born with it. We're born with these things that are kind of, society messes up or we mess up or whatever it is. And so I love you is one of the most powerful things that you'll ever say to yourself and then to anyone else. And it's changed my life.
Yep.
And it's wild. And I just want to touch real quick before we jump, this idea of conscious capitalism. It's becoming kind of cliche and people are jumping on the bandwagon. But what you spoke to a little while ago was conscious capitalism and doing something for the greater good. I don't know. Have you heard the news about Patagonia?
No.
So the billionaire no more Patagonia founder gives away the company, and basically it's valued at 3 billion, and it's going to give away $100 million a year to a trust that they created to help the world's environment.
Okay, good. When you said, have you heard about Patagonia? So I know Patagonia very well, and I was like, my heart dropped when you said this. That something
Oof.
bad had happened.
No.
Because what you're saying, what's powerful about Patagonia to me is that what you said was not a surprise to me. If you had said something else, I was going to literally like I was going to tear my hair out, but I don't have any. But I was going to still do it. I was going to like do it. I could.
Dig in there.
Patagonia, from its way they choose vendors, and they have a questionnaire about how do you interact with society as a vendor, and it's not like I want to constrain you to doing this thing. I'm just asking you as a company,
Yes.
do you think about your impact on the world? And just asking that simple questions in every one of the RFPs that comes from Patagonia. I had the honor of working with them at my last company, and I loved every moment of it because
Beautiful.
that instilled a principle based interaction with human beings, which means you don't jump. You have a problem. We talk about it. We address it. We bring data. They have to fire vendors. They have to hire vendors. That still happens, but you don't jump up on the table and call someone an asshole,
Yep.
right?
Right.
And that to me is that kind of bringing principles into the daily.
It's a beautiful way to do life. And just to kind of close it out from what you've been illuminating and what I believe in, business and life don't have to be separate. They could be business. Your core values as a human being can absolutely bleed into what you do for business. And business is just relationships when it comes down to it. However, those relationships are fostered, grown, developed, and ensured to last. It's all about relationships. And if you can show up as a powerful, great human being and kind, heart-centric, intelligent, caring, and that bleeds into your business, it's going to show. So I definitely feel that from you as a human being. I feel that for the work that you're doing. And I just want to be the first listener and viewer to say thank you so much for being you. Thank you for sharing the journey. And I can't wait to see where our journey leads, because I feel like there's going to be more conversations ahead.
Jesse T, I appreciate it. I do wish we had a chance to talk more about poop. I just realized as we're wrapping up, we started with poop and we didn't get a chance to make our way back. My goodness, like what kind of podcast is this?
We dropped the ball. We shit our pants, whatever you want to call it, brother. But you know what? I had a hell of a time, man, and I can't wait for the next one.
Awesome. Thank you,
Take
sir.
care,
I'd be honored to come back anytime.